This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we have one of my favorite persons in the state government and state politics today. She's very young still, but she's a veteran state politician, Ms. Twinkle Cavanaugh, who is the president of the Alabama Public Service Commission in her second or third term, I can't remember which, but she was a long-time political active in the Republican Party, and she is going to be a candidate for lieutenant governor in the June primary. And it's going to be a big year, y'all, but Twinkle is considered the front runner in that race because it's a name ID race, but she's working hard to get elected lieutenant governor of Alabama. Twinkle, good to have you on the show.
It is so good to be here with you again, Steve. I appreciate the invitation.
You and Kay Ivey are my favorites on my show. I think y'all may have broken the record for being on most times. Of course, y'all are here in Montgomery, and it's so easy to film this show for some statewide officials like yourself because we're right here in downtown Montgomery in the Rosa Parks building on the third floor, so it's convenient for y'all to get down here. And I have a lot of good state senator guests during the session too. We've had a lot of most of the statewide officials come down and everything, but everything y'all runs this year. We've got a governor's race, which is kind of an open race because Kay is not really the elected governor, Kay Ivey. Then Twinkle and several others are running for lieutenant governor. We got a very heated attorney general's race. We got a heated chief justice of the Supreme Court race. We've got all 140 legislative seats, all probate judges, and all the circuit judges. So it's going to be a heck of a year, Twinkle.
It's a big year. Alabama's got a lot of decisions to make and what direction we'll move forward in. And as I've said many times as I travel around the state, I am running for lieutenant governor, which is a little bit like running for a second-string quarterback. But I'm excited about it. I want to be on the team. I understand my job is to help our team succeed. But if called upon, I also need to be prepared to get out on the field. And I have had a great time so far traveling all around our state. We have a big, beautiful state with great people throughout, and it's been very enjoyable thus far.
Twinkle, you know, that's one of the questions I was going to ask you too. You have been in politics practically for 25 years now. I would say since your Republican Party stuff. When you start, when you're about 30?
Well,
you're not 50 years old, are you?
I was going to say, right out of college, I taught school for a year.
Yeah,
and then I got involved in Republican campaigns and have been involved since then on conservative issues. I'm definitely an issues candidate. And when you opened up the show, you mentioned politicians. I think that's gotten to be such an ugly word, and I like to consider myself a public servant. And that's one of the reasons everywhere I go throughout the state, I give out my cell phone number. I encourage people to call me if there's anything I can do, because I know I'm a little bit like that turtle up on a fence post, and I would not be able to serve without the great people of this state allowing me to serve. And so I like to be accessible, transparent, and travel around the state and be seen because it is a true honor to get to serve the people of the state.
Twinkle, tell me tell our viewers what role you will be doing as lieutenant governor, and if there's any aspects of that job you want to see expanded. For example, do you see any aspects you might work with the Alabama Development Office? I've always thought lieutenant governor was not utilized as much as they could be because, you know, if you have an industry hunting trip to Dallas for a business or California, it would seem if the governor and lieutenant governor both went, that'd be a good thing. Well, has that been done in the past as much as you think?
Many times over the years, we've had a lieutenant governor and a governor that weren't necessarily from the same parties.
That's right.
In recent history, and they weren't necessarily working together as a team. I want to be the team, on the team with our lieutenant governor, and as I call it, the leadership, the triangle of leadership, which is our pro tem, our speaker, and our governor. But we need to act as a team and raise the bar here in the state of Alabama. We need to market our state. As you know, nothing sells. You can go out on a car lot, and the first thing the guy does is he meets you right out there by the car. He's ready to sell. That's the way we need to act in Alabama. We need to be ready to sell the state and bring in higher and better paying jobs and help the folks that have industry here now grow and expand so folks will have good paying jobs here in our state. But you know, right now, the only two roles that the Lieutenant Governor truly has that are constitutional is to take over if the governor should leave office, and number two, call the balls and strikes in the Senate. Be the referee, as I call it, in the Senate. And so those are the two constitutional responsibilities. But look, anytime you do something, the responsibility is for you to do whatever is necessary or needed. And I think right now there are a lot of things we need in this state. We need higher and better paying jobs. We need someone to market our state when it comes to that. We also need to raise the bar with education. I want to work with our governor. We need to start early and finish strong. I think that's what she's saying, but I couldn't agree more. We need to make sure that we have a prepared workforce. We need to make sure if children want to go to one of our world-class colleges that they have the opportunity. But if they don't, that they have an opportunity to have world-class training to get a good paying job. But you know, there's so many things going on in our state that are overlooked, and I think the Lieutenant Governor can get that done. I want to be transparent. I want to be also a voice for the people of our state.
You know, I think you'd be a good voice in that capacity. And whoever's at the governor, if you're elected to the Lieutenant Governor, I think they ought to utilize that job. You know, even though Governor Bentley and Lieutenant Governor Kay Ivey were both Republicans, I don't know this. I'd never asked Governor Ivey about this, but Governor Bentley didn't seem to utilize Kay. He pretty much left her out of the things, and I don't think she was was in an adversarial role with him. I think she was ready to do some things. But another thing about that job that is I think important is the Lieutenant Governor's job. If it is a 4 or 8 year term for you, that one of the things I think that Kay Ivey has going for her, as far as the possibility of being a more effective governor than we've had in a while, is her relationship with the state senators. You know, so many times you think about government being so far removed, but if you're actually sitting there with those 35 state senators and presiding, and you're presiding fairly and honestly and treating everybody equal and being, like you said, the referee, not the try to be the leader, pushing them around, that holds her in good stead. I mean, those state senators like her.
Well, we have some great senators from all over the state, and they represent the people in their area. And so we need to be listening to those senators and those House members when they get to Montgomery, because they are closest to their constituents. Another thing I think the governor has done a good job with, and that is getting around the state and actually letting people see her, touch her, and hear from her. And I know she did a listening tour, and I thought that was really a good strategy. We need that in Montgomery. We need people listening to what the folks here in this state are saying and getting the job done they want us to do.
Twinkle, you and I are friends, and then we were talking before the show. I didn't tell you the story, but I was going to try to tell you. We were trying to get ready to go on the air, but talking about that Listen and Learn tour that Kay Ivey was on, Lynn Brooks, who is the anchor of WVUA in Tuscaloosa, a veteran anchor there, very popular, she and her husband, who were a lawyer, adopted this little girl named Emma, who had come through DHR, and she arrived at their house without any clothes or dolls or anything, not like Ann Wilkes, who probably has her own dollhouse, you know, she and all everything else. But she has, you know, like nothing. And so her mama went out, and you know this from Ann Wilkes, and my little granddaughter did something. They love Disney dolls. You know, that's the fad. And so she got her 2 Disney princess dolls, and she got her 1 benign doll that was dark-headed. And little Emma, the kids this day and time are so precocious with television. I mean, you know, Ann Wilkes was probably like a 16-year-old when you were, you know, so, you know, little Emma named the doll Kay Ivey.
Oh, how precious. I
Named
love that.
her doll. It was not, and she's real protective of Kay Ivey. She takes her and said, like, Mama, Kay Ivey has not had her bath, this and that and the other. Emma turned 7 years old one day about a month ago, or 2 months ago now, and she goes to Verner Elementary School in Tuscaloosa. Kay was there that day going to her school, and Emma was getting ready for school that day. She told her mother, said, Mama, you know, Kay Ivey's coming to the real Kay Ivey's coming to my school for my birthday today. Isn't that
How
cool?
precious. You know, I just realized I saw that on Governor Ivey's webpage. On her Twitter account, and I didn't know what the story was behind that.
Kay had no
girl
idea.
And the baby doll. That's right.
But she was like, she said, Mama, Kay Ivey, the real Kay Ivey's coming. It was like, you know how 6 and 7 year olds, they don't think anything about somebody being governor, lieutenant governor,
no, they
or
don't.
president of public service. She said, oh, she said this. She said, why did you name your doll Kay Ivey, Emma? She said, well, Mama, don't you know that Kay Ivey's president of Alabama the same way Donald Trump's president of the United States?
I love it.
Anyway, but
Well,
you know that one thing I want to say, getting off that personal note about that, is that what a great mother you've been to Ann Wilkes. You have that one daughter who's 10 or 11 now, isn't she?
She's 10,
10.
and the best title I have is Mama.
You do that. You really are. And I've got my oldest daughter, who is 40 in Birmingham. Vestavia, she has my only granddaughter, and she spends a lot of time. Almost reminds me of you, how she doesn't want to waste these years, you know. And I said, she said, well, Daddy, it costs me money as much as I spend with, you know, she's a lawyer, and practicing law takes time, and she said that I wouldn't get. I said I congratulated her the other day. It reminds me when I talked to her about that, about how much time you take with Ann Wilkes, and you've been a special mother for her.
Well, that time with my daughter is priceless.
I knew it was.
And she actually really enjoyed the presidential election last year. She knew all the candidates and what they stood for, and at the time she was in the 4th grade, and her bedtime was 8 o'clock. She probably wouldn't want that on TV, but we let her stay up and see, because you know those debates wouldn't start until after her bedtime, and we let her stay up and watch.
Would she have her favorites?
You know, she would really sit down and talk about the candidates, but I don't know that she actually supported one. She loved Governor Huckabee, and as you know, he got out fairly early, but Governor Huckabee was her favorite because we have a picture, really the only political picture she has as a baby was with Governor Huckabee, who was a presidential candidate at that point. So I think that's the reason she really liked Governor Huckabee, but she did.
Twinkle, going back now, you didn't all your life as a little girl when you were Ann Wilkes' age think you'd be in politics?
Oh, not at all.
Did you think you were going to be an educator, or what did you think you were going to be when you were in high? You went to Auburn, didn't you?
I did
When you
go
started
to
Auburn,
Auburn.
what were you majoring in, education?
I actually started out in pre-med because my mom and dad said they'd help me out with college if I got a math or a science degree. And most of the folks in my family, both of my parents have a degree in math and then a master's in math. So we are definitely a math and science family. My only brother is a physician. He's a doctor. So
where is he?
He's actually in Macon. And so needless to say, my parents did not want me to get a degree in political science or anything like that. In? And no, really I didn't. I really enjoyed science and got a degree in biology, and really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I had a lot of different, as I call it, hobbies and things I enjoyed, and I did enjoy, I campaigned for George H.W. Bush back in college.
While you were still in college?
I did, and I volunteered on a campaign in Montgomery for Emory Farmer, and this was many, many years ago, and I just enjoyed it. My roommate said, my roommate in college went to Washington to intern one summer, and she said, you know, I'm not very political, but you are. You would love to be up here.
Then you went on to Washington as soon as you graduated, didn't you?
Well, I taught school for a year.
Here in Montgomery.
So that I'd have enough money. I saved,
here in Montgomery.
Yes, in Montgomery. And
now your folks live around Montgomery,
that's right.
in our river region area.
And saved my money and loaded my car. I didn't own very much, and drove to Washington and got a job with the Republican National Committee. But
then you went to work for Callahan, didn't you?
I did. I went and worked for Congressman Callahan from Alabama. But I looked around, and I didn't have a role model, a female role model in Washington. And my role model was my grandmother. And I said, it's time.
Who's got Pike County roots?
That's right. And I said, it's time to come home. And so I left and moved back to Alabama, and I've been involved ever since.
Your grandmama and I were friends.
When she passed away, I told you, I opened up her cedar chest, and it said Steve Flowers and had your telephone number. You had been by the house, I think, campaigning.
Yeah.
She lived out in the woods.
I used to campaign with her. Now, she was buried in that cemetery up there where y'all's family is.
That's right.
In
Pike County.
What's that church? What's that church?
Raymer.
Yeah, Raymer. R-A-M-A-H. That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
And so she's buried up there.
That's right. Back to my 4th great-grandparents were buried in that cemetery.
I thought so. Yeah.
So deep roots in Pike County.
Twinkle, go back to your congressional time. You were in your 20s up there and worked for the National Republican Committee and then Callahan. Was Joe Bonner head of staff then too?
He was chief of staff for Sonny Callahan.
The whole time, wasn't he?
That's right.
Isn't he a great gentleman?
He is a perfect gentleman.
I love Joe Bonner.
I tease him and tell him I'm head of his fan club because his job truly was a public servant. He was always there to serve others, and he always tried to help everybody that came from Alabama find a job or find a place or feel at home, and he did a wonderful job.
I'm in his fan club too. I love Joe Bonner. Matter of fact, I wrote a column, probably come out next year, I keep them in the bank sometimes, about that 1st congressional district and the history of it. Now, I start with old Frank Boykin, who was a real colorful character. Then after him was Jack Edwards, who served 20 years, and then Callahan came for 18, then Joe Bonner for 10 or 12. But that's been Bradley Burns hit the ground running pretty good down there.
He's doing a great job and making us proud in Washington. When there are a lot of swamp critters, we happen to have some of the best from Alabama.
Twinkle, what sort of thought me is when you left to come back, did you come to work for the state party at that time when you came back?
Not in the very beginning. I worked on quite a few Republican campaigns. I also worked on an organization. I was the state director that pushed for lower taxes, less government here in Alabama, Citizens for a Sound Economy. And we were pushing George W. Bush's tax cuts. If you'll remember, they were trying to get rid of the death tax and trying to
did too, didn't
decrease the income tax and all. And so, yes, the taxes passed, and after remember, they were phased out. And after 10 years, the death tax was actually completely phased out. Then after 10 years, it came back. So we're now in the back session. But
Twinkle, you've worked the state extremely well. It's better than any person in government I've seen, because you've got a grassroots organization. You've run 4 or 5 times statewide, haven't you?
I am now serving. I ran for president. I ran for president of the Public Service Commission, and I did not win.
With Lucy Baxley.
With Lucy Baxley. Lucy beat me. I was the Republican nominee. I'm a fighter, though, and I came back 2 years later, and I beat the longest-serving Democrat at that point for place 1 on the commission. That's correct. And then 2 years after that, I ran for president of the commission and defeated Lucy Baxley, rest her soul.
So you're in your 6th year of.
And then I was just reelected again.
So you've run how many times statewide?
I have finished my. I have now finished my 7th year at the commission.
Well, see that bodes well. People that have run statewide, you know, it's like doing anything else. You get an organization.
Well, you know, Steve, more than anything, I think people can look at my record at the commission. And I went to the commission with one thing in mind, and that was right-sizing the commission. And we've talked about this on your show previously, but I didn't take a state car. I led by example. We've reduced our staff through attrition, not by firing folks, but through attrition. We didn't just necessarily say, hey, somebody left, let's go rehire back. Instead, we rearranged, retrained, and reorganized, and we've gone from 119 employees down to 72 today. And that saves the state money year after year. We've reduced our office space. We've reduced the number of cars. You only get a car if you are in your car all day long as your office, like our gas pipeline and safety folks or our railway safety folks. Those people are railway inspectors. Those folks need a car to get around all day, every day. But besides that, we don't just give employees a car to drive to and from work. So we've done a lot of different things. And when I got to the commission, we were given approximately $3.5 million to the general fund from what we collect and didn't use. This last fiscal year, we gave $13 million. And these expenses that we have cut out now are recurring, and we'll give that year after year back, or not back really. Once we collect it, we won't utilize it, and we'll give it to the general fund. We don't set the fees we collect. The legislature sets fees, and we collect those fees, and then anything we don't utilize, we turn back over to them. But we have been in a cost-saving mode for the entire 7 years I've been there. And I think you can see the fruits of what we've been able to accomplish. And I think that's what people see, that I asked them to give me an opportunity. They were willing to give me that opportunity, but I think they see that I was the true conservative they wanted me to be.
Well, I think you and whoever the governor is, if it's Republican or Democrat, one can work well together. You work well across lines. The only thing I would say that, and this has not been key, but as presiding officer, and our viewers may be missing a point we're bringing up here, is besides waiting in case something happens to the governor, which indeed happened this time, and Lieutenant Governor moved up to governor, but when I was growing up...
Let me say this. We all pray for Kay, and we want her to do well. We don't want anything to happen.
Right.
So, in fact, my little girl includes her every night in her prayers. So.
And she and Lemma from Tuscaloosa.
That's right.
But let me say this about this job, though. When I was growing up in politics and paging in the legislature and the Senate as a young man, and even by the time I got to the legislature, the lieutenant governor's job was extremely powerful in that it was not only presided over the Senate, it controlled the Senate. Lieutenant governor's job appointed committees and that sort of things. That power has been taken away and probably will not be given back. It's not a partisan thing, although it was probably initially a partisan thing. So we're alluding to the fact that Twinkle as lieutenant governor will preside over the Senate the way Kay Ivey has done previously as lieutenant governor, which is a busy job. I mean, plus you have a lot of engagements you have to be representing the state at too, and you have commissions that you have to serve on. A lot of them, boards and commissions. But the partisanship is very evident up there on Goat Hill as much as it is the United States Capitol. I observe Democrats and Republicans that walk down the hall, and I've observed this for 10 years now. They don't even speak to each other because they got an R&D by their name. Whereas when I was first there, I would have friends who were liberals, conservatives, Democrats, Republicans. It wasn't quite as partisan. And I'm not saying Kay did not do this, but on some occasions, my observation, and I tend to be a Republican, is that they ran over the Democrats in Orton. And I've watched you over your career, and even though you're extremely partisan, you've been a loyal Republican, been chairman of the party, you seem to be able to get along with folks on both sides of the aisle. I don't think those 9, 10 Democratic state senators need to be run over, ignored. And they have been, Twinkle. They ought to be at least given the chance to tell. They represent the same 150,000 people everybody else does, you know.
You know, thank you for the compliment, and I think that's important. I think that we let every voice be heard in the state of Alabama. Now, you know, I am a staunch conservative. However, I'm also first and foremost a Christian, and I love people in general. And we all tend to like our own the best. I mean, you know, you love your family the best and all, but the reality is we need to love all, and we're Alabamians first and foremost, and we've got to make sure that every voice is heard. And I will commit to the fact that as the Lieutenant Governor of this state, I will work with all people. It's one thing to campaign, and you can campaign your heart out with conservatives, but once you put your hand on the Bible, you've got to govern for all.
Yeah.
And that's very important that we don't lose sight of
Well,
that.
I want to say that and give you that compliment that I've watched you over the years, and there couldn't be anybody as pure, golden Republican. I mean, from being a Republican in the vineyards in Washington and national committee to being chairman of the Republican Party, and you've carried the Republican torch. But I don't think you're prejudiced against Democrats, I mean, per se. I mean, we need a two-party system in this state, and those 10 state senators who represent 1.5 million Alabamians,
Well,
they've got constituent concerns.
I can't call myself a thoroughbred Republican because my grandparents all voted Democrat.
Well, everybody did back then.
And I remember the first time my grandmother, when I said, Mama Gran, this is who you need to vote for this time. And she said, oh, but they're a Republican. I said, yes, ma'am. And so, you know, I loved my grandmother dearly, and a lot of folks in this state don't put an R by their name, but they're good people. And what we've got to do is learn to govern for everybody. Now look, I am committed to some of my causes. I am staunchly pro-life. I am staunchly Second Amendment. You know, I've got some views that are pretty strong. I don't believe we need to, taxes are not the answer to everything. I believe conservative government is the answer. But I also believe that we've got to listen to everybody because we're all God's children. We all need to respect one another and hear one another's views because, you know, somebody might not have grown up quite like I did and they might have a different viewpoint. I am very close to my cousin, and I have a first cousin that's a Democrat. And she's, I love her to death and she loves me to death, but the reality is we think completely differently. And everybody, they talk about, you know, at holidays you can't talk politics. Well, we do talk politics and we just know we disagree. But we've got to come together as a state, solve our problems, and move our state forward. My slogan this time is our brightest days are ahead of us, and I truly believe that.
Well, I think that our last few years has been very colorful in Alabama politics, and it has no partisan flavor. I mean, it happens on both sides of the aisles. So Twinkle, our time's up.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I sure do appreciate it, and I'll ask your voters today for their vote. I'd appreciate your vote in June. I want to serve you as your Lieutenant Governor, and I want to raise the bar in Alabama because our brightest days are ahead of us. And if you need me, you call me, 334-558-5432. And I encourage anyone that needs to call me to call me. That's the same number my mom, my daughter, and my husband have, so give me a call if you need anything.
Well, thank you, Twinkle. We thank our viewers for watching. Our guest tonight has been Twinkle Cavanaugh, the Public Service Commission President and candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Alabama in the June primary. Thank you all for watching.
Thanks.